In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to post a purchase invoice. There's two ways of posting a purchase invoice. You can post a purchase invoice directly from a purchase order if the purchase order has been set up. And the second way is to post a purchase invoice directly if you have an overhead where no purchase order was set up. So we go to the purchase order first, and to do that you go to modules, you go to supplier, you then go to purchase order list. Now you on the invoice that you will be given, you will have the purchase order number that you gave to the supplier. So you can search by entering the purchase order number and press quick search, and it'll bring up the purchase order number. Now if I clear that, you can also search by the supplier. Quick search, and here is our purchase order down here. So to deliver or to invoice this, what you need to do is update the ledger. And when you update the ledger, you will get a posted Y over here in this section here. So we will press update ledger, and the invoice that you have selected will be in there to update. Now you can update a number of purchase orders at the same time. So if you highlight 2 and select update ledgers, you'll be able to update both of these at the same time if you're doing them in batches. In this case, I'm just doing one, so I'll highlight the one that I want. I will say update ledger. It then goes through the invoice. We ordered 1, we delivered 1, there's nothing outstanding. So we're going to invoice 1. We hit update, and this will give us batch supplier invoice. The account is Digital River, which we know because we had selected the purchase order. So because we selected the purchase order, everything is already in here. So the account name comes in, the date. So we're going to put in the actual date of the invoice, and in this case it was the 3rd of January 2013. The reference is the reference that we use here is usually the purchase order. Now, or is usually the supplier reference, but what it'll do, it'll automatically pull in your purchase order reference. So what we've done here in APC is we will cut this, so Control and X will cut, and move that into the external reference, Control and V, and you'll understand this when I bring you into a supplier statement and show you the supplier statement. So the reference is the customer invoice, or the supplier invoice number, so 16110183745. That's the invoice number that you will get from the purchase invoice itself. Now over here in details, what we normally also do here in APC is we put in the account reference here, and this is for a reporting feature which we will show you in a further tutorial. So our supplier is Digital, DIGITALR. The net amount will match the invoice because you will have already agreed it from the purchase order. The tax code will also match. So as soon as you have done this, you can press save when you have agreed everything is correct. Select yes to that, and the invoice is now posted. Now to see that invoice posted, we'll see here over here posted has become Y. So let's go into our supplier. So I'll go back to suppliers. I'll clear that. And let's search for our supplier. Here it is here. Double click in, and if we go to activity, you will see the invoice has pulled in here. Now the reference, when I said that we move the reference from one field to another, the reason we will do this, because when you're reconciling a statement, you don't want our purchase order number in the reference field. You want the supplier invoice number, because that way then you can reconcile the statements to the supplier invoice number. And if you had our purchase order number in there, it would be very difficult to reconcile. So that's the reason for us changing the reference from one field to another. So we can close that because that was just an example to show you why we have moved the reference number. The next type of invoice posting that I'm going to show you is a direct invoice posting. You will post an invoice directly if you don't have a purchase order set up. So in this case, I have an invoice here for diesel supplier, and I'm going to do a quick search for my diesel supplier. my diesel cards. That's my diesel card supplier record. So to invoice, what we do is we hit batch invoice here. Now this is under the supplier field. So we go to batch invoice. And the first thing it's looking for is the account code. So we can select diesel cards. We enter the date of the invoice. The reference that we put in here is the supplier invoice number. The external reference, that would be the PO. So when I showed you the previous invoice, the PO number came up here in the reference. We moved it from the reference field to the external reference. We don't have a PO here, so we can leave that blank. The nominal code, when we set up a supplier, and if you remember from your supplier tutorial, we will have set up a default nominal code. So the default nominal code pulls in here. The departments, and this is something we will show you in a later tutorial. Department 0 is for balance sheet items. Department 1 is for overheads that are not allocated to a different, to a particular job. If we have a job, we will set up a new department code. If you want to cost a particular item to a specific code, we will set up a new department for that code. So because it's not for a particular job, it's just a general overhead, it's department 1. Project reference cost code we can skip. Details. So in the details, as per the previous invoices we posted, the first thing we put in here is the supplier reference, diesel, and our details is for week ending the 2nd of January 13. Put in as much detail as you need to put in here, so if you're looking back at invoices and reports, you'll be able to see exactly what the invoice is for. The net amount, now this here says net euro, but it will be net the local currency that you have set up. The net amount is the amount before local taxes. So in our case, we enter the amount on the invoice. And because when we set up the supplier, we will have set the supplier up with the relevant tax code, it should automatically calculate your tax. So your tax rate will show up here, and your total invoice value will show underneath here. Now in this case, the tax code that was set up with the supplier is actually incorrect. So we want to select the correct tax code, so we can just click on the drop down, pick the correct tax code, and the tax value will automatically update. As soon as you have all the details entered, now if you have a batch of invoices, you can go down here and you can enter a second invoice. It doesn't have to be to the same account, you can have a second account code. Then you can press save. And your invoice has been entered. Once the invoice has been entered, you can press close. And the invoice is now being entered fully onto your supplier account. In APC, then we have an approval procedure where invoices are actually held for payment until they have been approved by the appropriate person. To hold an invoice for payment, under the supplier module, also under links, if you go to dispute and you select the account, now it's automatically selected the account that I already have picked. And if you highlight the invoice, press dispute, and you'll be given a reason as to why the invoice is disputed, and it's not signed off at this stage, so we just hit OK, and we'll see that it's disputed and it's not signed off. Now, when an invoice is disputed, it will not yet allow you pay this invoice in Sage, so it will need to be released from dispute first. To release it from dispute, double click the invoice and it'll release it from dispute. I'm going to leave it on dispute in this case and hit save. Now you must remember to hit save when you press dispute or undispute. That's the end of the tutorial on posting invoices. I hope you understood. If you haven't fully understood, there is also the help option, which you will find up here in Sage. And you can go into the context and index, type in the topic you're looking for, or you can also try and look for some of the Sage video tutorials.